Part 5. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 41. Really, Layton turned around and saw that the speaker was a tall and thin man with a pink afro. He was wearing a motorcycle jacket covered with rivets and nuts, and two old-fashioned mechanical arms stretching out from the shortened sleeves. You can find out if it's true or not by yourself. It's not a secret there was a hint of resentment in the pink afro's tone. Kaylan glanced at his prosthetic body, which was at least 150. It is a 10-year-old model, and even the common standard parts have been discontinued for a long time. It is difficult to find these items even on the black market, and I don't know how he completes daily maintenance. Layton had already taken out a pad from his pocket. He didn't care that his fingers were still stained with oil and started swiping on the screen. But the more he wrote, the darker his expression became. Hey, the Hickman 6 type skeleton has increased by a full 50% compared to a month ago. Norma Technologies chips are more than twice as expensive. And Tamron Biotech is biochemical filling fluid. What on earth is this? What's going on? Layton's eyes scanned the rows of numbers. They were his upgrade budget. But based on the latest price, he would have to pay at least double the credit points. And many items are already out of stock. According to rumors, new alien technology has been cracked at the Institute. Didn't you read the news 2 days ago? According to those bullshit experts, artificial prosthetic technology will leapfrog to a completely new level within 3 years. At the same level, every manufacturer is now researching and developing new technologies. Many existing old production lines need to be transformed into production lines with new equipment, but you also know that we cannot afford the new equipment, and the old supply is beginning to shrink. Therefore, the prices of accessories for existing models have begun to increase. The pink afro twisted his wrist joint, and the rusty metal part suddenly made a tooth-piercing friction sound. Under normal circumstances, this price can't be so outrageous. There must be some profiteers hoarding the goods. It's a stupid thing, Layton said with some indignation. If this had happened before, he would have waited for 1.5 years at most. When equipment equipped with new technologies comes on the market, the prices of old models will naturally fall back. But the problem is that he can't wait now. He can't run around with an external battery all day long, right? And without that mechanical arm, Layton's own strength would be greatly reduced. Let alone exploring the ruins, it would be difficult to even protect himself in the wilderness. What can I do? I have a lot of credits in my account. The pink afro sighed. You look like you are ruin hunters, right? Yes, Kaylan nodded. There is nothing to hide about this kind of thing, and you can find it with just a quick search. At least your income is not low. For a wage earner like me, a few years of wages may not be enough to replace a prosthetic body. Then you still have money to drink. Kaylan was speechless. There was a 150 ml bottle of Roland Malt Craft on the table with a pink afro. Although the price of beer was cheaper than that of liquor, the portion was already more than what Kaylan and the three of them had in their cups combined. Anyway, there is no hope for the day. It's just a day that can last for a day. The pink afro shrugged indifferently. Who knows if I will suddenly die tomorrow? If the money in my pocket is not spent, wouldn't it be death? What about your family? Kaylan asked. On the Ark, there are still only a few people like him who were born in the cultivation center. Most people still maintain the traditional human family structure. There used to be a sister who saved up 10 years of money for genetic modification surgery. However, she was tricked by the Black Heart Biotech company. The surgery failed and she died. The pink afro's tone was extremely cold, just like the one who died. The person is not his sister but just an unrelated stranger. After chatting for a long time, I still don't know your name. Kaylan quickly changed the topic. Bart L., if you think it's okay to call me Daddy in a roundabout way. Bartelty glanced at the advertising wall in the distance. It's getting late. It's time to go. We're going to sea again early tomorrow morning. Going to sea? Kaylan was stunned for a moment. This word was indeed a bit unfamiliar to the people on the Ark. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I am a boatman, not a spaceship, but the kind of ship that sails in the sea. Bartleby grabbed the bottle and drank it in one gulp. Now you know, burp, why should I spend all my money today? The sea you said you were going to go out to, wouldn't it be the Zonghai? There are only 2 oceans on Alpha Planet, and the naming method is also very simple and crude. The one at the South Pole is called Extreme Sea or Duanhai, and the other place is called Zonghai. Otherwise, you can't sail a ship in the Extreme Sea. As Bartleby said, the Extreme Sea is unavigable. The entire ocean is covered by ice sheets more than 10 meters thick. Even a nuclear-powered icebreaker would be difficult to break it. Oh, by the way, there is also a group of hunters among the people who went out to sea this time. We discovered a ruins under the Central Sea, and they went to explore this ruins. Bartleby suddenly said. Huh? What kind of ruins? Can you tell me in detail? Hearing the word ruins, Kaylan, Hound, and Leighton instantly became interested. For hunters, in addition to the ability to eat, the ability to collect and process intelligence is also very important, especially the intelligence related to the Alpha ruins. In the past, these things had to be bought with money, and the ones bought were also very important. It may not be useful. Boss, Hound snapped his fingers, give this guy some roasted leeks and charge it to our account. Bartlett immediately sat down with a somewhat annoying smile on his face. Hey, can you get some more drinks? Tell me first, what kind of ruins are they? Okay. Actually, I don't know much, but it must be first-hand information. Bartleby pretended to be mysterious. That's a city. City, Kaylan and Hound looked at each other, each seeing a hint of surprise in the other's eyes. The ruins at this level of the city must be extremely large ruins, and the level will definitely not be low. Yes, the city, Bartleby licked his chapped lips and continued, the city was supposed to be built on a small island in the middle of the sea, but for some reason, the island sank to the bottom of the sea. The city on the island naturally turned into an undersea city. How big is the city? Asked the Hound. I don't know the exact size, but I remember that during the last survey, it took our ship a week to complete a circle, and the voyage had to be hundreds of nautical miles. It's a big guy, Leighton said excitedly. But there are a lot of sea beasts in that sea area. We encountered at least a dozen attacks along the way, and several people died. As for the last batch of hunters who went into the water, none of them came out alive. For the sake of you treating me to something to eat, come on, I advise you not to take this job, Bartleby said sincerely. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 42. Aren't all the sea beasts in the middle sea in the deep sea? How come they come to the shallow sea to attack you? The Hound was a little confused. I said it was that sea area, no matter how deep or shallow the sea is, as long as you get close to that underwater ruins, those sea beasts will attack. How should I put it? It feels like a tamed watchdog. Bartleby searched for a long time before he came up with the metaphor of watchdog. It is indeed possible, Kaylan nodded. In the A-087 ruins, the cracked jaws they encountered were the guards cultivated by the Afar aliens in the ruins. This was not an isolated case. This phenomenon exists in many ruins, but hunters do not use guard dogs to describe those creatures, but refer to them collectively as ruin guards. Generally speaking, the guards outside the ruins will be cleared directly by air strikes. The firepower of a fighter squadron is enough to kill them. As for the guards inside the ruins, the hunters who need to explore will face them on their own. However, the situation of this undersea ruins is quite special. It is difficult for air strikes to be effective, and the weapons carried by the ships are too bulky. Whether they are torpedoes or depth bombs, not only cannot they effectively destroy the target, but they can also easily affect the ruins themselves. No wonder there were such large casualties on their ship. Have the ruins been registered on the Hunter network? What's the number? Layton's finger stopped on the pad screen and asked. The number, let me think about it, it seems to be a -091. No, it's not this. A -091 is in the Relic area, not the undersea city you mentioned. Layton glanced at the found content and shook his head. I remembered it wrong, then try 094, a -094. This should be the right one. Layton entered the number of -094 in the search bar, and finally got it right this time. However, there were absolutely zero exploration records of the ruins on the Hunter network, and there was no useful information except the location. Tisk, hasn't anyone entered this place before? The hound pouted, rubbing the stubble on his chin vigorously with his fingers. It's a tricky virgin land. Didn't I say, none of the people who went into the water in the last batch came back, so how can there be any records? Bartelti said while chewing roasted leeks. If there is no exploration record, it will be directly rated as a level. Old dog, you know what I mean. Ian's tone was a little heavy. Hiss, I know. Although the hound did not say it clearly, among the few people present, except for Bartelti, everyone knew clearly that the initial evaluation was an A-level relic, and it has great potential to be upgraded to S-level in the future. Even the legendary SS level. During the past 50 years, there were a total of 19 ruins initially rated as A-level, 17 of which were eventually rated as S-level. 3 of them were even raised to SS level, but were later downgraded due to some reasons. Returning to S-level, the ruins of SS level are still in a vacant state. The price humans pay for exploring any S-level ruins is extremely painful, but the things unearthed from each S-level ruins are enough to raise the level of human science and technology to a new level. If to put it in a more understandable way, the impact of each S-class relic on human civilization is no less than that of a great man of Einstein's level. Moreover, these things are just the tip of the iceberg revealed by S-class ruins. Some scholars once asserted that if humans could completely analyze everything unearthed from the existing 17 S-class ruins, they would be able to restore at least 30% of the technology of Alpha civilization. This would be enough to advance human civilization for 2,000 years. If this were another S-class ruins, a lot of people would probably die. Layton sighed and turned off the pad screen. But if it is really rated as S-level, there will definitely be a lot of hunters trying to get there. Everyone will feel that they are one of the lucky few. The hound played with a stick in his hand. The steel drill used to skewer meat is used to pick the teeth with the nail of the little finger. You don't want to go too, do you? Bartelti's eyes widened and he even stopped moving in his mouth. That depends on the situation. Kaylan knocked on the table lightly. Boss, what would you like to drink? It's best to have Snow's cold beer. If there's no snow, the Blue Islander will do. Bartelti's eyes lit up instantly and he subconsciously made a swallowing motion. You really dare to speak? Ian's eyebrows couldn't help but twitch. Snow and Cyan Island are both old brands handed down from the old era. There are so many brands of beer on the Ark, and the last one is they are the only two expensive ones. Hee, I'm just kidding. I'll be very satisfied with a bottle of Roland. Bartelti shrank his head and hurriedly rubbed his hands and said with a smile. Boss, give him a bottle. Before Kaylan could finish speaking, a tall, muscular man wearing a blue and white striped undershirt suddenly squeezed in from outside the store. As soon as he saw Bartelti, he grabbed him whole. Standing next to this guy, Bartelti, who was as tall as a bamboo pole, looked even thinner. Okay, Dad, I finally found you. The strong man's voice was very rough, with the hoarse feeling of an old smoker. Quinn. Why did you come to me? Bartelti wanted to break free from the opponent's hand, but the disparity in strength destined his struggle to be completely in vain. It's time to start work. Our entire mechanic team is waiting for you alone. You bastard makes it easy for me to find you, Quinn yelled at Bartelti, almost spraying his saliva all over the latter's face. Don't we go to sea tomorrow morning? Bartelti was a little confused. The plan has been changed and moved forward. Don't worry, you will get the overtime pay, but if our entire team is fined because of your lateness, then you are finished. Wait a minute, let me finish the drink. Have a drink. The ship is about to leave. Quinn picked up Bartelti without any explanation and dragged him outside. Ah, who is that? Next time we meet, don't forget my wine. Bartelti didn't remember until now. He still didn't know the names of these hunters who had been chatting for a long time, but to be honest, these people are all pretty good. The key is to be generous. If you can come back alive, Dad, I will definitely keep the wine for you. Kaylan waved towards Bartelti. The hound on the side suddenly rolled his eyes. Are you too cruel? This flag inserted. Are you still superstitious about this? Kaylan was a little speechless. BA is a member of the mechanical repair team and is not a combatant. Unless the ship sinks, how could he be in any danger? Stop it, if you keep talking, I feel like everyone on the ship will be sucked to death by you. After having enough wine and food, the three of them dispersed and went back to their respective homes. Although the harvest from the A-087 ruins this time was not a sudden fortune, at least Kaylan and the others would be able to have enough food and clothing for the next 6 months. That was what Bartelti said. They are not in a hurry to study this underwater city. The initial exploration of a ruins with S-level potential can last 1 to 2 years. Ian's residence is located in the North 5th District. It is a small room of only 20 square meters. This is a standard single-person residence on the Ark. As a registered hunter, Kaylan only needs to pay 1,200 credit points every month. If you have the right to use it, including the housing subsidy issued by Ark, this room is almost free of charge. Although the mahjong is small, it is well equipped with all the living facilities that a small room should have. There is even a room dedicated to a cubicle that serves as a studio. I can finally have a good sleep in my own bed. Kaylan thought so and walked quickly towards his home. But when he saw the door of his home, he found a familiar figure squatting in front of the door. The man was wearing a shabby gray-knitted hoodie and he held a sheathed war blade inside. Asano Akira. Kaylan was stunned for a moment, then ran over quickly. You're still alive. When did you return to the Ark? Just now. Asano Akira stood up from the ground, and Kaylan noticed that his expression was very strange. That's not an illusion. Asano Akira suddenly said such a meaningless sentence. What? The monster you said you saw was not an illusion. Kaylan suddenly held his breath and his pupils shrank slightly. Why? Layton, Yvonne, Hound, and I, we have indeed never seen that monster in our memories. Asano Akira's tone was very calm, but with an unquestionable determination, but he still has remember. He? Who is he? Kaylan was really confused this time. The person Akira Asano was talking about, couldn't be Zwaligetu, right? But hasn't he been in a coma the whole time? My sword, Asano Akira said without surprising, although I have forgotten it, my sword still remembers the battle with that monster. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 43. What are you talking about? Kaylan looked at Asano Akira with suspicion, and then at the knife in his arms. Could this guy be a severe fetishist and delusional? He had indeed heard that some soldiers would imagine the guns in their hands to look like beautiful girls, and even call the weapons their wives all day long. In the early years, there were also rumors that some people used guns to commit suicide, and accidentally triggered the trigger. The farce of the gun being loaded with bullets, no, the tragedy. My sword is my eyes, it will not lie to me, Akira Asano said eloquently. This. Kaylan couldn't help but fell into silence. This symptom seems to be in the advanced stage. I know you don't believe me, Asano Akira hesitated and said in a very low voice, can you let me go in and talk to you in detail? This is confidential. Okay, K-Lan nodded quickly. Even if Asano Akira himself didn't ask, he wouldn't leave the person outside the door. After all, they have a lifelong friendship. It might be a little messy inside. K-Lan put his eyes close to the door lock, and the red light net swept over his irises. With a crisp click, the metal door opened a small crack. What do you want to drink? But I only have purified water and instant coffee here. Oh, and there is also a box of lemon-flavored soda, but it must have expired for a long time. K-Lan pushed the door open and entered. Water will do. 2 aluminum alloy cups were placed on the dining table, which was less than 1 square meter in size. The water in each cup just covered the 100 ml mark. Drinkable purified water is also a very precious resource, especially those with a purification level of level 4 or above. This type of water has no radiation, no pollution, is clear and transparent, and has a sweet taste. Of course, the price is also very considerable. The price of these 2 cups of 4th grade water is no cheaper than a bottle of Roland malt craft beer. If a hound were here, he would definitely be tempted to curse luxury. It's level 4 water, Asano Akira said. You must get something good to entertain guests, right? The only chair in the room was given to Akira Asano, while K-Lan sat on the edge of the bed. Let's get down to business. Akira Asano put down his cup. Have you ever heard of telekinetic human experiments? K-Lan shook his head. I have been part of this experimental force before. I thought your army was all masters of cold weapons. K-Lan said, but what is this telekinesis? This ability comes from the Alpha civilization. A hunter found a device in the ruins that can multiply the power of a creature's thoughts. People at the Institute discovered that when the power of thought is strong enough to a certain extent, it will have the ability to change reality. Ability. Are you writing a fantasy novel? K-Lan almost choked on the water in his mouth. Can I understand here, when the mind is strong enough, all wishes can come true? Almost. But it's not as magical as you described. With that device, you can only use your mind to control some weapons, such as swords and firearms. Flying immortal with a sword? Okay, it seems like it's not a fantasy novel, it's a fairy tale. K-Lan glanced at Asano Akira's sword again and asked tentatively, then you can make it fly. I can't do it. Akira Asano gently stroked the scabbard with his hand, but it has the imprint of my thoughts on it, and it is part of my body. To be honest, Kinyi, I don't quite understand this. K-Lan suddenly found that he was at a loss for words. They tried to expand human thoughts to the limit. To that extent, maybe everything you said can be realized, but the experiment failed, including everyone who participated in the experiment. It was a failure. No one succeeded. Many people died, and more people went crazy. The closer to that threshold, the more miserable the ending will be, and my ability is almost at the bottom among all experimental subjects, so the price I paid is very small. Akira Asano pointed out, pointing to his own eyes. Did you become blind because of this? Yes. Actually, my eyes are intact, but the area of my brain responsible for vision is completely dead. This is the price. Akira Asano continued, the experimental unit was disbanded, all data was sealed, and the experimental subjects who lost their minds were dealt with. People like me were asked to sign a confidentiality agreement. If it is leaked, people from the Security Bureau will, etc., etc. K-Lan jumped up immediately, walked to the door, added 3 code locks in a row, and fastened the anti-theft chain. Then he pulled out a dusty machine from under the bed, plugged it in, and turned on the switch. A slight buzzing sound immediately came from the machine. What is this? An air purifier, Akira Asano asked as his ears moved slightly. No, It's just a jammer. It can interfere with all monitoring devices within 20 meters, Cooper. Yes, my master, a neutral voice sounded in the room. This is the smart butler equipped by ARC for each resident, and comes with the room. Disconnect from the network, close all background programs, and enter hibernation mode. Including temperature control equipment and air filters. That could have adverse effects on the owner's health. Yes, turn them all off, then you can go to sleep and wake up in an hour, Kaylan said. As you command, Master Cooper's voice disappeared, and at the same time, the room suddenly became much colder. Kaylan wiped the sweat from his forehead and said helplessly, since it is a fatal secret, why did you just say it like this? I'm sorry. Asano Akira's face showed a rare light red. Okay, it's okay, you can continue talking. I just said, yes, when it comes to the disbandment of the unit, you all signed a confidentiality agreement. My thoughts are imprinted into this knife. You can regard it as a part of my body and an extension of my arm. Akira Asano grabbed the scabbard and raised the knife flat in front of him. Huh? What then? That day in the ruins, you said that you and I were separated. Later, you and Layton encountered a centipede-like monster in a stone room. The monster had the same face as me. Yes, just when Layton and I were about to give it away, you suddenly rushed out, fought with that monster for 18 rounds, and chopped the guy with one knife, and then led us to the huge stone door. My memory does not contain the things you described. I clearly remember that I have always been with you. We have never encountered the monster or fought in the stone room. We also discovered the stone door together. Asano Zhao's voice was a little low. So you all say that what I saw was an illusion. I later returned to the stone room with Laogo and Layton, but I didn't find any traces of fighting there. Kaylan recalled, so even myself, I don't know whether what I see is real or illusory. Although I don't have those memories, my knife does. Your sword has memory. Could it be that it has become a spirit? Ian's face looked a little strange. No. It's just the memory of the battle. Akira Asano suddenly took out the sword from its sheath and gently stroked the fingers of his left hand along the spine of the sword. There were a total of 117 collisions, and the last move was to take a cassock chop, then step back, turn over the wrist and draw the sword, first cutting off the enemy's weapon, and then cutting off the head. Akira Asano said. The strange expression on Ian's face disappeared. He sat upright with some seriousness and looked directly at Asano Akira and his sword. In his previous description of the Phantom, he had never mentioned these details, but Asano Akira actually described it accurately. All of our memories have been tampered with except for yours. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 44. Kaylan was silent for a full 2 minutes. During this period, he stood up and walked around the bed, flipping through several drawings on the workbench. Then he took out a pen from the cabinet and was stunned for 2 seconds. Put the pen back again, and sat back on the edge of the bed. I can feel that you seem anxious. Can I not be anxious? Kaylan scratched his hair hard. By the way, did you take notes when you returned to ARC? What was written in the notes? I did it, but I didn't say it. That's right, after all, this matter involves some kind of confidential experiment of yours. Kaylan rubbed his cheeks and tried to calm down. At this moment, the pad in Ian's pocket suddenly vibrated. Additional explanation: what is disconnected is the Internet of Things and Wi-Fi in the residence, and the pad uses a GPRS network similar to a mobile phone to send and receive information. He opened it and saw that it was an email from Hound, with an attachment. This is confidential information leaked from the Research Institute. After reading it, shred the document immediately and don't leave any traces. Attached is a video file. The video is very short, only about a minute long. There is a video in the message sent by Laogo. Kaylan and Asano Akira talked for a while and then clicked the play button. The video quality is very poor, the light is dim, and the camera keeps shaking, but you can still vaguely see the side of the ship nearby and the sea in the distance. This is a video taken on a boat. It was probably just after nightfall, and there is still a dark orange afterglow at the end of the sea level. There are only 2 oceans on Alpha. The polar sea located at the South Pole is frozen all year round, and it should be in the polar day period now. If this video was taken recently, it can only be above the Middle Sea. This made Kaylan think of the boatman he just met in the small bar. A group of people wearing cold-resistant protective clothing were running around on the deck. They looked nervous. In addition to the deafening waves, there were people shouting something in the background. Unfortunately, there was too much noise, and Kaylan could only barely hear it. Salvage, rescue and other words. Waves tens of meters high mixed with broken ice slapped against the hull of the ship. When they fell, they were like hailstorms. From time to time, people fell to the ground. The worst guy even slipped out for more than 10 meters until he hit the ship. It stopped on a steel frame. A dozen sailors pulled a steel cable and dragged up a completely deformed spherical diving cabin. Armed men with guns surrounded the diving cabin. A soldier wearing light power armor stepped forward and used an acetylene torch to cut open the stuck hatch. No signs of life. I repeat, no signs of life were detected in the diving chamber. Kaylan finally heard the sentence clearly. The person who shot the video came closer at this time, and saw the soldiers in power armor put down the tools in their hands and dragged a corpse out of it. It was a human mummy, but his abdomen was as swollen as a pregnant woman who was about to give birth at 9 months of pregnancy. The video ends abruptly here. Kaylan took a deep breath, clicked play again, and then dragged the progress bar to the last 10 seconds. Fast forward, pause, play at 0.25x speed, pause. The scene was frozen at the moment when the mummy was dragged out of the diving chamber. It can't be that thing. Kaylan felt his heart tremble, quickly deleted the video, and then sent a communication request to the Hound. In less than a second, the communication was connected, and the Hound was obviously waiting for Kaylan to contact him. Has the video been deleted? Hound asked as soon as he opened his mouth. Deleted? Did you see anything? It's very similar to the priestess. Kaylan was naturally referring to the mummy pulled out of the diving cabin. Remember what the people from the Security Bureau called that thing? It should be called flesh-eating worm, right? Flesh-eating worms. Kaylan felt his scalp numb. The first time he came across this word was not from the mouth of the Security Bureau investigator, but from those in his mind. Memory fragments of unknown origin. Do you know where the video was taken? Zhonghai. Not only in the Middle Sea, but also in the sea area where the undersea city is located. This icebreaker is called Pioneer 1, which is where Bartholdi works. The video was shot half a month ago, and the seabed was just discovered. When the city remains. It seems that things are more troublesome than what Bartholdi described. Kaylan didn't blame Bartholdi. After all, he was just a mechanic and spent most of his time in the engine room in the bottom cabin. He didn't have many people on the deck. Opportunity, everyone who saw the scene must have been given a silence order, and it was impossible to tell Bartholdi the truth. It is understandable that Bartholdi knew nothing about it. People from the Security Bureau must know the inside story. But they certainly won't tell me. If there are really flesh-eating worms in that guy's belly, people from the Security Bureau will definitely keep an eye on you. You have to be more careful. I'll hang up here first. If the communication time is too long, the risk of being monitored is high. As for other things, the Hound didn't ask much, which made Kaylan breathe a sigh of relief. Hound and Akira Asano were trustworthy, but he still didn't tell them these secrets, not because he didn't want to tell them, but because he couldn't explain them if he told them. On the contrary, it would involve them and increase unnecessary risks. As for what information the Security Bureau and the military have, Kaylan has no way of guessing now and can only take it one step at a time. Since there are traces of flesh-eating worms in the undersea city, he just needs to stay far away from that place. Anyway, there are so many ruins on Alpha Planet, and just exploring those low-level ruins that are not too dangerous is enough to sustain his life. Just when Kaylan was thinking this, he suddenly received a request for a video call. Is there something else that this guy forgot to say? Do you still want a video? Kaylan muttered in his heart, but when he looked down, he found that the person who sent the request was a stranger, Natasha. Natasha. Why does this name sound familiar? Kaylan always felt that he had heard this name somewhere, but the name Natasha was used too frequently among female Slavs. There are several female stars named Natasha in Ursa's pictures alone. Ivan's girlfriend seems to be named Natasha. He told us that she won 3 consecutive championships in the women's free fighting competition. Asano Akira, who was sitting at the table, said. Yes. But what does Ivan's girlfriend want from me? With this question in mind, Kaylan clicked the agree button. This is an extremely beautiful Slavic girl. She has sculptural 3-dimensional facial features and long wavy light golden hair. She wears a silver necklace on her long neck, and below is a bottomless canyon. It's just that Kaylan couldn't appreciate the beautiful scenery of the canyon at this time. The girl's face showed obvious anxiety and panic, her eyes were red, and there were tears in the corners of her eyes. Are you, Natasha? Kaylan hesitated and said hello in Chinese. Kaylan does not speak Russian, but as the language with the largest number of speakers on the Ark, Chinese has become the official default universal language. Yes, you are Kaylan, right? The girl's Chinese was a little shaky, but at least it didn't affect communication. Yes, I am. Kaylan nodded. I am, Ivan, Ivan's girlfriend. Please, help us, the girl said with a hint of crying. What happened to Ivan? He seemed to be infected by something, but he wouldn't let me go to another doctor or touch him. He asked me to come to you, if you can help us. If so, please must. The girl moved the camera while crying, and saw Ivan, who had just parted recently, lying dying on an operating chair. His exposed skin turned red, like a cooked crab. His chest rose and fell greatly, and each rise and fall was accompanied by slight twitching of his limbs. It was obvious that breathing had become an extremely difficult task for him. Don't panic, be sure to stay calm, be careful not to touch Ivan's body, and then show me the wound on his arm, Kaylan said. Ivan's injured arm was covered with a blood-stained surgical towel. It was covered, but judging from the shape protruding from the cloth, it clearly didn't look like a human arm. Okay. Natasha walked over tremblingly and picked up the surgical towel with a pair of long metal tweezers. Ah! Kaylan couldn't help but exclaimed softly. Ivan's entire arm has been completely alienated. Several fleshy tentacles as thick as a handful are intertwined like tangled vines. The original bones and muscle tissue are no longer visible at all. They squirm like snakes, transparent and sticky. Thick secretion kept dripping to the ground. I'll rush over right away. Remember, never touch him, Kaylan said quickly, then opened the communication window that had just been closed and sent a text message to the Hound. Something happened to Ivan. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 45. Ivan's clinic is located in the North 4th District, not too far from Ian's home. It only took less than 20 minutes for Kaylan and Akira Asano to arrive at the door of the clinic. Hound and Layton were a little further away, but they rented a car directly and were one step ahead of Kaylan. When the two of them saw Akira Asano following Kaylan, their originally anxious faces finally showed a touch of surprise. Akira Asano? When did you come back? Layton rubbed his hands excitedly. His broken mechanical arm was finally replaced, but judging from the degree of wear and tear of the parts, this should be just a piece of equipment. Transitional second hand. Just now Asano. Akira's answer was exactly the same as before. Where's Zaligatu? Is he still alive? Alive, now in the public medical clinic in Dongju district. He is unwilling to wear a prosthetic limb, and he has to wait in line for a month for the reconstruction surgery of the amputated limb, Akira Asano said. Well, it's good that you two are still alive. Let's not talk about this for now. Let's go and see the doctor how he is doing. Hound sighed and opened the door of the clinic first. Ivan's girlfriend Natasha was sitting in the lobby of the clinic waiting for them. She was wearing a protective suit that Ivan used when he went out to explore the ruins. The size of the protective suit was several sizes larger than her body, so she had to use it. The tape tied the sleeves and trousers tightly so that normal movements would not be affected. As you said, I hid Ivan in the basement. Seeing Kaylan and others coming in, Natasha stood up quickly. The place where she was sitting was the entrance to the basement. You haven't been in contact with Ivan, have you? Kaylan asked. Natasha shook her head. That's good. Kaylan glanced at Natasha's bucket-like fully enclosed helmet. There was an oxygen tank connected to the tube behind the helmet. The infection should not be airborne, otherwise we would have been infected. Kaylan, there's nothing wrong with you, right? I remember you helped Ivan before. Hound added from the side. I should be fine. Ivan had just been infected at that time and it hadn't spread to his body yet, and I didn't have direct contact with his wounds, Kaylan said, taking out the prepared rubber gloves from his pocket and giving them to everyone. Anyway, it's better to be careful. I'm not sure if Ivan's current arm will be offensive. The passage to the basement has been opened, and under the guidance of Natasha, Kaylan, and others walked down the steps step by step. The basement is also the operating room of this clinic. The temperature inside is adjusted very low, and even the glass walls of the sterile cubicles are covered with a layer of white frost. I think, low temperature might be able to delay the progression of the infection. Natasha murmured. I'm afraid it's useless. Kaylan glanced at the vital sign monitoring equipment aside. The numbers on it showed that Ivan's body temperature had reached an astonishing 41 degrees Celsius. The mutated cells have invaded his whole body, and his own immune system is losing ground. Entering the sterile cubicle, Kaylan saw Ivan lying on the operating chair from the previous video. His body was fixed by dozens of non-woven fabric restraints, especially the completely mutated arm. Tied like a rice dumpling, tightly attached to the armrest of the chair. There are 2 trachea stuck in his nose, and the tracheas are connected to a ventilator nearby, which continuously pumps oxygen into Ivan's lungs. Well done. Kaylan gave Natasha a thumbs up. Being able to accomplish all this in such a short period of time is already much better than the average person, especially in this situation where care leads to chaos. I need vascular clamps, scalpels, scissors, tweezers. Oh yes, I also need some hormones, not dexamethasone, which will suppress the body's own immune function. Do you have any epinephrine? Kaylan, are you planning to cut off Ivan's arm entirely? Hound asked from the side. The infection has spread. It's too late to just cut off the arm. Kaylan shook his head, but at least we have to grasp the extent of the infection first. Those surgical tools were quickly found by Natasha, along with 3 bottles of epinephrine hydrochloride injection in brown light-proof glass tubes. Kaylan raised his hand to adjust the angle of the shadowless lamp, and then carefully untied the restraints on his alienated arms. Lighten, use your robotic arm to help me hold this arm down. It may cause a stress reaction when the knife is cut. Kaylan turned around and said. Okay. Layton nodded. A pair of iron pliers protruded from the front end of his robotic arm, clamping the elbow and wrist of the alienated arm respectively. Kaylan put on a mask, raised the scalpel, and stabbed it in quickly. As he expected, these entangled tentacles struggled violently, but compared to the power of the mechanical arm, they were too weak. Kaylan raised his knife and dropped it, and a tentacle about 3 centimeters long came out from the upper part of the alienated arm was separated. No blood vessels and nerve tissue were found. The bones and soft tissues of the arm remain intact, but the muscles and fat have completely disappeared. the area below the elbow has been completely alienated, and the tissue cells above the elbow have been severely invaded. Judging from the degree of invasion, it was determined that the infection had spread throughout the body. Then, can he be saved? The hound's face looked ugly, while Natasha on the other side was covering her mouth and sobbing. I'm not sure. I suspect his lungs have also undergone abnormality. He needs a thoracotomy, otherwise he won't survive tonight. Rather than making him suffer so much, why not? The hound showed a trace of unbearability. There is a way, but... Kaylan hesitated. Let's do the surgery first, I will talk to you later. Anesthesia, disinfection, selecting the fourth intercostal space to open the chest, then removing the mutated lung tissue, stopping the bleeding, connecting the artificial lung, and then suturing. The whole operation took more than 3 hours, but after being connected to the artificial lung, Ivan's breathing was obviously much smoother than before, and his vital signs also improved from a critical state. But the problem is still not solved. Taking off his blood-stained gloves, Kaylan exhaled tiredly. Old dog, do you still remember how we killed the mutant in that settlement, Messenger? You mean, flesh-eating worms? Yes, Kaylan nodded. Are you planning to go to that undersea city? Hound immediately reacted. He wanted to get clues about the flesh-eating worms. Apart from the security bureau, the only thing he had was the video he sent before. But we first have to determine whether the corpse in the video is a parasite of flesh-eating worms, otherwise everything is empty talk. Have you ever thought about the feasibility of the plan? Even if there are indeed flesh-eating worms in the undersea city, it is a ruins with an A-level initial rating. Do you know how many people will die exploring such a ruins? If you just want to save Ivan alone. If everyone's lives are involved, then I will never agree. I'm sorry, Natasha. The hound shook his head at the girl. We don't necessarily have to enter the ruins. Judging from the information provided by Bartelti and the information from the Hunter Network, no one has been able to enter the underwater city yet. In other words, the person in the video is most likely outside the ruins. Parasitized, Kaylan said. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 46. You are gambling. Hound stared into Ian's eyes, his expression extremely serious. You are gambling with your life. Yes, Ivan's life, and the lives of the rest of us, Kaylan said. How sure are you? Honestly. 30%. Kaylan originally wanted to say less than 10%, in fact, he didn't even know 10%. No one knows whether there is anything they want in the underwater city, all the clues come from the shocking glimpse in the blurry video. It's too low. If the winning rate is less than 50% when I play cards, I won't play. Hound pursed his lips and turned his head to look at Ivan. What's more, we are not gamblers now. It's not like playing cards. This is life-threatening, the hound added in his mind. But the bet is not absolute. Even if the bet is wrong, it will not lead to a total loss. Kaylan walked around the operating chair. Although Ivan's condition has stabilized now, no one can. I don't know how long his own immune system can last. When the immune system completely collapses, I'm afraid he will become the second seed of erosion. Of course, in order to eliminate this risk, they can kill Ivan now and burn the body and the alienated cells at high temperatures. This is the most conservative approach and the most correct choice from a rational perspective. There was a subtle stalemate among the people present, and a bone-chilling chill gradually rose in the operating room. Kaylan also knew that the hound objected to his plan not because he was afraid of death. On the contrary, if he could enter the underwater city alone, he would definitely board the Pioneer without hesitation, but in fact, even if the four of them combined, the success rate of this operation is still slim. Even Natasha stopped sobbing. She lowered her head and held a dark green surgical towel tightly with both hands, trying her best not to let her eyes stay on Yvonne. Ian's eyes swept over the girl's red and swollen eyes. His lips moved, but he finally swallowed his words. He couldn't comfort Natasha, any words were too pale in this situation. Should I take a gamble or just give up? How about, let's vote. Leighton looked at the Hound, then at Kaylan, and said cautiously. But as soon as he made the suggestion, the Hound gave him a slap in the face. Vote? Vote with a hammer, the deadlock has been broken, and the Hound simply stopped being silent and cursed. Since we want to save people, we have to make arrangements quickly. If we delay it any longer, I think the doctor won't be able to hold on. Got it? Have you decided? Kaylan looked at the Hound. Before I regret it, tell me what your plans are, the Hound said impatiently. Okay, Leighton, you can log into the Hunter network immediately, apply for an exploration mission, and at the same time contact the vehicle that can take us to the Pioneer as quickly as possible. Don't care about the price. The search scope is expanded to all aircraft parked in the airport. Even if it's a battleship, as long as we can afford the air tickets, book it for me. Okay, Leighton nodded. Old dog, you have to find a way to get some sets of diving equipment. It must be of military protection level. In addition, we also need underwater boosters and weapons that can be used in the water. Battles are definitely unavoidable. This you have to be mentally prepared. That's no problem. I can also use my connections to get depth charges, if you need them. Natasha, you immediately rush to the nearest medical supplies exchange point and buy as much fluorocarbon emulsion and artificial cell permeate as possible. Remember, you must buy a low-temperature model with a freezing point below -120 degrees Celsius. Oh, Natasha nodded quickly and hurried out. Fluorocarbon? Are you planning to? There was a hint of surprise on the Hound's face. Yes, I plan to freeze Yvonne to buy enough time for our actions, Kaylan said. Fluorocarbon is a highly safe substitute for human blood. When a patient loses a lot of blood and cannot receive timely blood transfusion, this emulsion can be used as an emergency supply to maintain the body's blood pressure and provide a certain amount of oxygen. Transportation capability. In the medical community, this thing is also called artificial blood. Cell permeate is a new type of biological agent that can replace the water in biological cells by controlling osmotic pressure. It is generally used in the fields of organ preservation and wound treatment. What Kaylan had to do was to use fluorocarbon emulsion to replace the blood in Ivan's body, replace the cell fluid with osmotic fluid, and then use a liquid nitrogen tank to freeze Yvonne. Low temperature cannot inhibit the erosion of alienated cells, but when the temperature drops to a certain level, the cells in Ivan's body will enter a hibernation state. This state is no different from suspended animation, and life activities almost completely stop. The alienation method of the seed of erosion is accomplished by modifying the genetic sequence of the host cell. In this state, the alienation process will naturally become extremely slow. With these two substitutes, Kaylan does not have to worry about Ivan's body cells being damaged due to the ice crystallization of the liquid during freezing. This is also the routine chosen by most biomedical companies when providing body cryonics services. Operate. How much time can we buy if Yvonne is frozen? I have never seen this kind of alienated cells before. I don't know for sure. If I had to give a number, it would be 7 days at most. Let's be more conservative, 5 days. Kaylan held out 5 fingers. So short, the Hound frowned. If we want to completely alienate it, it will naturally take more than this time, but in fact as long as the alienated cells invade the brain, even if we can find flesh-eating worms, it will be meaningless. According to the current level of biotechnology, all organs in the body, including the heart, can be replaced with artificial objects, except the brain. Perhaps the top medical research institutes have made breakthroughs in this regard, but Kaylan it was impossible to ask those in white coats for help. If Ivan's condition was known to them, they would only think about how to get him on the autopsy table instead of rescuing the person. In their eyes, perhaps a completely alienated Ivan has more research value. It takes 10 hours by the fastest transport plane to get from Ark to Zhonghai. If the round trip time is 1 day, then we have a total of 6 days available. If we have not found the flesh-eating worms beyond this time, the operation must be suspended. The Hound glanced at his watch and said, "You have no objection, do you?" No. Kaylan shook his head. "Found it." At this time, Leighton shouted at the side, "I found a high-speed transport ship, and its destination happened to be China Shipping's Pioneer icebreaker. In addition to transporting supplies, it also brought a team of the hunters of the Aurora Consortium are also going to explore this undersea city. I asked the leader on the opposite side, and he said he could take us on board, but we have to pay half of the fee." "How many people do they have?" Hound frowned. The rental price of a high-speed transport ship was much more expensive than a transport aircraft. "I haven't said anything specifically, but an advanced team like this, including logistics, should have at least 20 or 30 people, right?" Leighton scratched his head. "There are only 4 of us. It's really shameful for us to bear half of the expenses." Hound was a little unhappy. "Forget it, it'll be nice if you can free up 4 seats for us. If you're going to be slaughtered, you'll be slaughtered." "By the way, what time does the transport ship leave?" 11 o'clock tonight, 6 hours left. Deducting these 6 hours, there are still 138 hours before the deadline. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi San. Chapter 47. The medical supplies exchange point is not far from Ivan's clinic. In less than half an hour, Natasha bought everything Kaylan told her. A dozen high-pressure cylinders that had just been taken out of the icehouse were lying side by side on a small truck, with their surfaces covered with a thin layer of frost. Natasha almost emptied the inventory of this exchange point. Fortunately, this is a self-service exchange point and there are no clerks, so it doesn't arouse any suspicion. While Kaylan was exchanging blood for Ivan, Hound used his connections in the army to get them 2 large boxes of equipment. Inside the 2 large metal boxes were more than a dozen neatly stacked cardboard boxes of different sizes. These cardboard boxes all had seals without words on them, and the original production batch numbers on the sides of the boxes had also been artificially erased. Military-grade tactical deep diving suit, with injectable pressurizer, can dive to a depth of 1,200 meters. Reinforced fiber fabric plus 4 layers of embedded metal mesh, lightweight ceramic armor sheet, protection level is level 6. PS In the real world, there are only 4 levels of protection for bulletproof vests, I to 4 due to technological development in the setting of this book. 3 new levels are added, V, 6, and 7. This level is only used to evaluate wearable protective capabilities, excluding tactical exoskeletons and powered armor. 1 can of the A-grade oxygen generator produced by Kiun Chemical can last for 48 hours. These are restricted supplies according to military regulations and are difficult to buy on the black market. The Hound opened the boxes one by one and saw numerous treasures. Introduced. Big guy, try this. Hound grabbed a streamlined light machine gun and threw it to Leighton. The Shark Hunter Type 6 underwater machine gun abandons the piston gas guide structure used in conventional firearms and adopts a fully enclosed electric gun with crystal energy supply. The theoretical life of the gun is 80,000 rounds. However, do not use it on land. This thing has no cooling device, and there is a risk of explosion if it overheats. The caliber seems to be less than 7 mm. Is it using underwater pistol bullets? Is the lethality guaranteed? Leighton squinted his eyes and looked into the barrel of the gun. He saw 6 right-hand spirals. There is no trace of wear on the rifling, it is obviously new from the factory. Idiot, this box of bullets is more expensive than that machine gun. Hound found a bullet chain box made of reinforced engineering plastic from another carton and threw it to Leighton. So there is someone like you who calls himself. Is there something that the weapons expert doesn't know? Damn, when I retired, there wasn't even a prototype of this thing. Even now, it is probably only deployed in a very small number of troops. How could I have seen this thing? Layton opened the ammunition belt with some dissatisfaction. Box, the specification is 150 rounds, and the firepower is sustained quite well, but the caliber is too small, isn't it? Lying in the box is a special underwater bullet that is shaped like a slender steel needle. The length of the exposed warhead is several times the length of the bullet case. The surface is also etched with a fluid groove specifically designed to stabilize the ballistic trajectory underwater, but as Layton said, the caliber of these machine gun bullets is really small, only 4.95 mm, which is a circle smaller than the 6 mm flechette bullets used in conventional underwater pistols. This is a special explosion bomb for shark hunters. It contains highly concentrated explosives. It will detonate after being injected into the target's body, causing secondary damage. The hound knocked on the lid of the box. This thing will kill you in one shot. It requires 75 credits, so you'd better save some for me. So expensive, Layton was shocked, but he soon discovered that the bullet was indeed expensive for a reason. In order to make up for the decrease in strength caused by the hollow structure, the warhead was actually mixed with a high proportion of nylon. Not alloy. This thing is much more expensive than gold of the same weight. Frogman underwater pistol, you must be familiar with this thing, right? I got 8 of them, 2 for each person, but don't count on the power of this thing, it can only be used to deal with some crispy little guys. Hound took out 8 more iron gray pistols. This pistol has 6 barrels. Each barrel can be loaded with a 6 mm flechette bullet. Pull the trigger once to fire 1 round. Of course, you can also adjust the trigger. A small knob on the top changes it to a 6-shot salvo mode. There is no magazine, and it needs to be reloaded after 6 shots. However, Hound also purchased a lot of preloaded magazines. For a skilled shooter, changing bullets will not take more than 5 seconds at most. Old dog, you've spent a lot of money this time. Layton couldn't put it down and played with the Shark Hunter Type 6. As long as you can save your life, it's worth spending any money. Hound curled his lips and looked at the operating room aside. At this moment, all the fluids in Ivan's body had been replaced with artificial ones that would not crystallize at low temperatures. Preparation, his whole body was covered with pipes, and Kaylan was carefully putting the body into a silver-white liquid nitrogen freezing tank. At this moment, a loud knock on the door suddenly came from above. Who? Layton directly installed the magazine box on the machine gun, pulled the bolt, and shouted. Idiot, I told you not to use this gun on land. Are all the muscles in your head? The Hound said so, but he also pulled out a pistol, turned on the safety, and pressed his body against the door. Back. Will he be the one who comes to seek medical treatment? Kaylan stopped what he was doing and raised his head. It shouldn't be. Natasha's breathing was a little rapid. Ivan's clinic only accepts patients who have made an appointment, but I have cancelled all the appointments and paid liquidated damages. Bang bang, there were 2 more knocks on the door. Natasha, it's not convenient for us to make any noise. You can go up and ask and find a way to drive people away, the Hound said. Good. But before he went up, a familiar voice came from outside. It's me, Jolajitu. Is it the Mongolian guy? Isn't he still in the hospital waiting for the surgery to reconstruct his severed limb? The Hound looked at Asano Akira. I don't know, but I did inform him of what happened here, Asano Akira said calmly. You all stay here and don't move. I'll open the door for him. Hound put away his pistol. The only person who came was indeed Zwalajitu. This man walked down behind the Hound. His walking posture was a bit funny, and he looked like a top-heavy duck. Alas, I can't help it. I can't get used to this mechanical prosthetic limb, but the restoration of the amputated limb has taken too long, So I can't wait any longer. Jolajito smiled honestly, thanks to you, I'm not there. He died in a ghost place, and now something happened to the doctor. You are all going to hide it from me, right? You didn't leave me as a burden in the ruins before, so why don't you take me with you now? I don't want to hide it from you, it's just. The Hound hesitated. Our brothers are all close friends, so I must be counted among them for this operation. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 48. Okay, but how is your physical condition now? Hound asked. No problem. It's just, I'm just not used to this prosthetic leg. Zwilajito raised his leg. The prosthetic leg he used was the Forerunner 2 produced by Norma Technology, which belongs to the 4th generation. The leader in mechanical prosthetics, each side is equipped with 26 myoelectric signal sensors, which are responsive, have good force control and joint cushioning. A brand new set of mechanical prosthetics like this does not include those miscellaneous things. The official price of the modification and expansion package is 35,000 credit points, which is almost the same price if you buy it on the black market. But things are good, and no matter how advanced a biochemical prosthetic body is, it always takes a while to debug and adapt when it is first installed. Especially for people like Jolajito who have never used prosthetic limbs, it is even more difficult. Adapted. But it's not a big problem. Hound murmured, anyway, underwater movement relies on propellers, but I have to ask you again, are you sure you want to go? This is an A-level relic in the initial evaluation, and it has not yet been successfully explored. Of course, Zwilajito said without hesitation. Go on the Hound's side imperceptibly, and gave Zwilajito 2 metal tubes over 1 meter long and as thick as the mouth of a bowl. What is this? A rocket launcher? Or a man-made anti-aircraft missile? Zwilajito squinted his eyes and observed the 2 metal barrels, but the inscriptions on them had been rubbed off long before they were delivered, leaving only there is a warning icon next to the safety valve. Vortex I portable torpedo, depleted uranium warhead, crystallized engine, each cost 8,800 credits. When Hound reported the price, the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. This operation was indeed after spending a lot of money. These 2 torpedoes alone are already worth the equipment of an ordinary hunter. Even for hunters of their level, the reward for an exploration mission is not much when it can reach 5 figures, let alone those low-level hunters who are ridiculed as scavengers. Okk-Lan walked out of the sterile compartment, and the thick glass door slowly lowered, completely blocking out the crushing chill inside. You unlucky guy, you'd better hold on until we come back. The Hound glanced at the freezing tank behind the glass and whispered to himself. K-Lan looked at his watch and saw that there were still 2 hours left before the transport ship took off. Hurry up. Once we reach Zonghai, there will be no time to breathe. K-Lan grabbed the 2 underwater pistols assigned to him and inserted them into the holsters under his ribs. Leighton, check the thrusters and everything else, as well as the equipment that requires crystal converters. If something goes wrong by then, don't call yourself a weapons expert anymore. Also, I contact another person. Hound said, took out the communicator and dialed a number. Wait a minute, old dog, is the person you are looking for reliable? Reliable, my old subordinate, the guy who almost rebelled with me at that time, Hound said and touched his chin again. It's a pity, this guy had a good future, but I got involved, otherwise what would happen now? He must be a school official. Not long after, a young man wearing greasy work clothes appeared at the door of the clinic. A brief introduction. Liao Zilang was once the platoon leader of the reconnaissance platoon under my command. He is good at tracking and counter-tracking, laying traps, and his marksmanship and fighting skills are also top-notch, Hound said. Hello everyone. Liao Zilang nodded to everyone. Hello. K-Lan was the first to extend his hand to Liao Zilang. The latter hesitated slightly and then shook hands with K-Lan. As soon as he touched Liao Zilang's palm, K-Lan let out a cry of surprise in his heart. The other person's skin did not have the texture that a human should have at all, but more like the silicone skin used in simulated biochemical prostheses, but it seemed to be better than silicone. The skin is tougher. Your hand. Kaylan looked up along Liao Zilang's arm, but he found no traces of the biochemical prosthesis, not even the surgical incision. In other words, the other party's the arm should be an original item. Not only his arms, but when he got closer, he discovered that all the exposed skin of this person had the same texture, even his face, so that if you look closely, his smile would feel very unnatural. Liao Zilang just smiled and said nothing, while Hound explained, this kid worked as a shipbreaker at the airport with his father when he was a child. One time, he accidentally fell into a tank of toxic wastewater. Logically speaking, someone else would definitely be dead. However, he was lucky enough to survive. Not only did he crawl out alive, he also developed a benign mutation. Benign mutation, Kaylan was a little surprised. Yes, you have also noticed that his skin is completely different from ours. It is strong enough to shoot 9mm pistol bullets at close range. Not only that, he is not afraid of strong acids and alkalis, to use a proverb among you Chinese people, how to put it, oh, yes, it's invulnerable to fire and water. Even electric shock has no effect. Moreover, this kid's radiation resistance is almost abnormal. He didn't even need to wear protective clothing when he ran outside the Ark. Then at that time, people from the research institute came to my army every day to ask for help, but they were all kicked away by me. There was a hint of envy in Hound's tone. Boss, you look up to me too much. I still can't handle some areas with strong radiation. Liao Zilang smiled and touched the back of his head. What the hell, those places with stronger radiation in your mouth would have been killed by someone else, Hound scolded with a smile. This mutant ability is indeed a bit abnormal. Kaylan suddenly thought of something and asked Liao Zilang, the seawater in Zonghai contains toxins, and we cannot directly remove them. What about you? Have you tried it? I tried it once. On the west coast of Zonghai, I dived almost 200 meters deep with bare hands. I didn't bring a depth gauge at that time. I can't remember the exact amount, Liao Zilang replied. Awesome. In response to this, Kaylan could only hold back the word awesome after holding it in for a long time. For them, if the diving suit is damaged during the diving process, it will be extremely dangerous. But for Liao Zilang, it seems to be completely indifferent. The poison and radiation in the seawater will not be affected at all. What harm did it do to him? Can the person I found be awesome? Hound said proudly. I originally wanted to follow my boss and become a hunter, but my dad is in poor health and needs someone to take care of me. I can't go out on missions all year round, so I returned to my hometown, Liao Zilang said, but my boss often helps people like me. Brothers who behave like this are not very good, so as long as the boss gives orders, we people will still be the boss's soldiers. Okay, the wounded have returned to the team, the equipment has been set up, new people have joined, and we are ready to set off soon. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 49. 1035, Ark, the 6th Airport in East District 11. Lighton, is that the transport ship? Kaylan asked. The 6th airport has a total of 3 large berths and 12 small berths, but most of the berths are empty at this time. There is only a small berth near the corner where a 200-meter-long high-speed transport ship is parked, and several ground crew members are parked there. Personnel are standing on the suspended platform nearby conducting final inspections. Probably Leighton glanced at the Aurora Consortium trademark on the transport ship and nodded. A sound of friction between rubber tires and metal ground came from behind everyone. They all looked back and saw a heavy-duty forklift slowly approaching carrying a 3-meter square metal box. The surface of this metal box wrapped in a thick layer of flame-retardant foam, wing-shaped solar photovoltaic panels are folded on both sides, and 8 sets of rocket thrusters are fixed to the bottom of the box with detachable brackets. This thing can't be an artificial satellite, right? Liao Zilang had a strange look on his face. It seems that some people are still insisting on this thing. It's such a waste of time and money. The Hound couldn't help but cursed in a low voice. The artificial satellite was quickly loaded onto the transport ship by workers. In order to save resources, humans have abandoned disposable space launch vehicles and instead used empty ships to launch satellites. The spaceship will take the artificial satellite out of Alpha Star's atmosphere and then throw it out. The propeller on the satellite will self-adjust and finally send the satellite into the predetermined orbit. However, in the past 50 years, humans have launched hundreds of artificial satellites on Alpha Star, but none of them have been successfully put into use. The homeland of mankind, the Earth, was once a planet surrounded by artificial celestial bodies. Hundreds of thousands of artificial satellites, space stations, and various space platforms were operating in their respective orbits. Communications, positioning, and meteorological observations on the Earth, even wars are inseparable from these man-made celestial bodies. Although most people living on the ground cannot see these things, they are closely related and inseparable from human life. But on Alpha Planet, the situation is completely different. There is an ionized turbulence layer hundreds of kilometers thick in the outermost layer of Alpha Star's atmosphere. Although this ionized turbulent layer can weaken the radiation from the star and protect the ecology on Alpha Star, it also requires artificial satellite launches. The electromagnetic waves coming out cannot penetrate this layer of turbulence at all, unless the power of the electromagnetic waves is expanded to weapon level. Then people must solve the two more difficult problems of energy supply for artificial satellites and the safety performance of electromagnetic launch devices. For now, the main means of communication used by humans on Alpha Star are various portable radio devices, and long-distance communications are achieved with the help of base stations such as transfer stations, airships, or high-altitude communication hot air balloons. Are you just a bunch of trash pickers qualified to talk about our Aurora Consortium satellite project? A somewhat harsh female voice sounded not far away. Hound was stunned for a moment. His voice was already very low, but it was still listened to by someone. It seemed that either the other party had the ability to hear, or was equipped with some kind of listening device. The speaker was a young woman with a shaved head. She was wearing a light gray one-piece field training uniform, and a combat vest full of pockets. There was a very conspicuous Aurora Consortium logo printed on the front of the vest. Trash picker? I think you are also a hunter, right? Be careful next time and don't curse yourself too. Kaylan glanced at the woman's equipment and said in a very calm tone. Haha. The woman sneered twice. Don't compare professional relic hunters like us with scavengers who make a living by picking up leaks. If I guess correctly, you are the ones who want to hitchhike, right? Think about it. I also know that poor people like you can't afford an aircraft. See, this is the so-called superiority of direct cannon fodder. After all, it is a dog raised by rich people. It is fuller and more powerful when barked. Kaylan ignored the woman, but turned his head and smiled. He said to his companion. That's true. Hey, look at that guy's face turning so red. Ha, he's so anxious, compared to the yin and yang strange energy, the old ruffian Hound is no less powerful. P.S. I originally wanted to use the word in this place, but the more I typed it out, the more I felt something was wrong. Later, I checked the information and found out that not showing off too much has always been a wrong way of writing, and the correct way is not too much let, and the meaning is completely different. It seems you don't want to get on the transport ship, right? Kaylan and Hound only said a few words. The female hunter who belonged to the Aurora Consortium was already on the verge of getting angry. She pointed at Kaylan and the others. One hand was pressed on the holster on his waist, almost without drawing the gun. Our money is not paid to you, and you have no right to refuse us. I don't think your master will lose a lot of money in shipping for a dog, right? The hound thought for a while, and suddenly added, I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't say you are a dog. After all, the status of cheap cannon fodder may not be as good as that of a dog. You, the woman finally couldn't restrain the anger in her heart and pulled out her pistol. Sharon. Don't use guns in the airport. A tall man wearing the same training uniform happened to catch a glimpse of this scene. He strode over, grabbed the woman named Sharon, and held her with a gun. The hand pressed down hard. I am the captain of the 9th Hunter team of the Aurora Consortium, Benson, and the leader of this advanced team. Are you the group of independent hunters who have contacted us before? He glanced at Kaylan and others standing opposite. His eyes were extremely unfriendly. Benson was extremely tall, even close to Layton, who had undergone level 4 biochemical transformation. With just a slight lift of his thick and powerful arms, he picked up Sharon, who was 1.75 meters tall, and threw him to the back of the team. Yes, the credit points have been transferred to the account you provided. Layton nodded. He was basically in charge of the handover matters with the Aurora Consortium. We did receive the money, but you said it was 4 people at first. How come it has become 7 now? Benson squinted, with a somewhat unhappy look on his face. Of course, these emotions may be more from the brief conflict just now. In addition to Zholajitu and Liao Zilang, Natasha also came with her. Under her strong request, Kaylan and the others had to bring this girl who had won the women's free fighting competition 3 times in a row, although from the outside, she doesn't look like she can fight at all. We paid half the money, so it's not a big deal to bring 3 more people, right? Kaylan looked at the advanced team members behind Benson. They were all wearing uniforms with the Aurora Consortium's logo. There were 29 people in total. Counting Sharon, there were 4 women in total, but the other 3 were all wearing orange logistics uniforms, and only Sharon was a genuine relic hunter. There may have been some misunderstandings in the exchange of information. As you can see, this transport ship is not leased by us, but is an asset of our Aurora Consortium. There was a hint of arrogance in Benson's tone. Obviously, he wanted to take this opportunity to raise the price and kill Kaylan and the others again. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 50. Are you ready to break the contract? Kaylan stepped forward and looked directly into the other party's eyes. Although this is your transport ship, according to the rules on the Ark, since you have collected the money, you have no right to refuse us boarding. Ha! Benson chuckled. Please figure out who broke the contract first. We agreed before that we would only carry 4 people. Of course I will not refuse you to board the ship, but there are only 4 places. You decide for yourselves. Benson turned around and walked towards the transport ship, but before taking 2 steps, he suddenly turned his head and said, Oh, by the way, I have a good solution. Although we only agreed to let 4 of you, you can board the ship individually, but according to industry rules, each of you can also carry 2 cubic meters of equipment weighing no more than 1 ton. If any of you volunteer to use yourself as equipment to squat in the cargo hold, I won't do it either. Mind. What do you mean? Zwilajito stared at Benson angrily, his 2 huge fists clenched tightly, and the joints even made a crisp sound like fried beans. Is that what I mean? I'm just thinking about you. In addition, I have to give you a warm reminder, in a high-altitude environment, it is best to keep the equipment warm and bring an oxygen bottle, otherwise you will not be able to reach your destination. But it will turn into 3 popsicles, ha ha ha. You make an offer, Kaylan said after being silent for a moment. What did you say? I didn't hear clearly. Benson pretended to dig his ears with his little fingers. If you bring 3 more people, you can just ask for the extra price, Kaylan said word by word, but I have to remind you that if you plan to ask for an extravagant price, you will still violate the laws of the Ark. If I remember wrongly, it should be Articles 7, 8, and 14 of Chapter 2 of the Price Law. Damn, Kaylan, you kid, do you still understand this? Hound muttered very quietly from behind. Money, to be honest, we are not in short supply. Benson twitched his lips and showed an arrogant smile. We need information, information related to the undersea city. Kaylan shook his head and said, the information we have obtained is similar to what you know. I'm afraid you won't be interested in these things. No, 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 that's not what I'm talking about. Benson shook his head even harder than Kaylan. I mean, I want first-hand information from your field exploration, including full video and actual measurement data, and we want a copy of every specimen we get underwater. Are you planning to let us serve as pawns for your people? You think that's it? Don't you plan to go into the water? Or, you spent such a large amount of money to go to Zhonghai for vacation? Benson crossed his arms and raised his chin slightly, taking advantage of his height. Looking at Kaylan, how is it? Are this condition acceptable? This guy's conditions are really. A feeling of irritation suddenly emerged from the depths of Ian's heart. Logically speaking, there were actually many loopholes in this condition. The other party did not stipulate that they had to take the lead, and they could just spend time on the ship. To put it bluntly, even if the advance team of the Aurora Consortium is wiped out before exploring the underwater city, it will not be considered a violation of the agreement. But the problem lies in time. For Kaylan and the others, this operation is completely different from previous tasks. They are trying to save people and must race against time. Everyone present could afford to wait, except Yvonne, who was lying in the liquid nitrogen freezing tank. Okay, I promise you. Kaylan finally nodded. Okay, I like to deal with people who are cheerful and happy to cooperate. Benson stretched out his hand towards Kaylan, but Kaylan completely ignored him and walked straight past him. Instead, he followed Kaylan behind him. Layton took advantage of the opportunity to hold Benson's hand. Even if it is a second-hand product, the power of the mechanical prosthetic body is still not comparable to that of the human body. Kaylan only heard a muffled groan from behind, followed by Layton's hypocritical apology. I'm sorry, this mechanical arms, the sensor is not very sensitive, I didn't control my strength well, I'm really sorry. Benson covered his other hand with one hand, glared at Kaylan and the others fiercely, turned around and left. Layton, how are you? Kaylan turned his head and asked the big man behind him, who was several heads taller than him. There is no mechanical prosthetic body found on him, but he should have received physical enhancement, at least level 3 or above. I just used 80% of my strength, but it only caused him a little pain. Not to mention the muscles and bones, not even the flesh was hurt. As he spoke, Dunn stretched out his mechanical arm, and saw that the edge of the palm made of alloy was slightly deformed. Be careful on the road, he is a ruthless character, Hound said solemnly. When it comes to ruthless characters, the ruthless one among us hasn't spoken yet. Layton suddenly grinned and looked at Asano Akira, who was standing at the end of the team. Asano, if you were asked to deal with that Benson, how confident would you be? Hound asked curiously. Akira Asano, 30%? No. I said you are too modest, right? I mean 3 seconds. Ahem. The Hound suddenly choked on his own saliva. You guy, when did you learn this way of showing off? Akira Asano didn't answer him, he just held the war blade to himself, with his eyes lowered, with an attitude of I don't know, don't ask me. Let's go, it's getting late. There are still a lot of things to do when we get there. Kaylan glanced at the suspended projection screen in mid-air. The time displayed in the upper right corner of the screen happened to be exactly 10:50, which is about 10:50 from the Aurora Consortium. There are still 10 minutes left before the transport ship takes off. Although this high-speed transport ship of the Aurora Consortium does not look big from the outside, the cabin is quite spacious, with nearly 100 seats. In addition to Kaylan and Benson's advance team, there are 2 groups of people who have already arrived. Already seated in the cabin. One team consists of escort soldiers wearing dark blue uniforms and black vests. Their mission is to escort a batch of urgently needed supplies to the Pioneer icebreaker. The other team is the technical staff of the Aurora Consortium. They are responsible for the artificial satellite just now. The launch mission, these two groups of people were busy with their own affairs. Regarding the arrival of Kaylan and others, they probably only glanced up and looked away. On the other hand, the hunters under Benson had been looking at Kaylan and others with extremely unkind eyes since they entered the cabin. One of them, a lean dwarf with a mohawk hairstyle, even jumped on the table. While grinning at Kaylan and the others, he gestured with his hands to cut his throat. Is this the professional relic hunter that bitches call him? Why do I look like a bunch of gangsters with no hair on their head? Hound couldn't help complaining to Kaylan, but his voice was slightly louder. A little bit, so that everyone in this cabin heard the sentence.